everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Linda, the scrapbooking photographer, and today I'm taking part in a Mix It Up Monday YouTube hop, which is run by Anna R. Veach and Tara O'Rourke from the Peace Love Craft Clubhouse. So we have a sketch to work with today, which has 6 2x2 inch squares as photos. So 2x2 is a little small for me, so I'm going to go 3x3 and reduce it to 4, and that works in with the 4 chickens that I want to document today. So we have only one chicken left now, which is this one, Petra. So she is lasting longer than any of the others. And with chickens, it's a bit hard to introduce new ones because there's always a pecking order, and Petra would be at the bottom. So we don't want to see her old age compromised. So she lives a very nice life. But before that, we had Jade, Onyx and Scarlet that were her pen mates. So I'm going to do those today. We also have a 3-inch frame from Close to My Heart, which I'm going to use. This stencil I thought looked a little bit like chicken wire. Now obviously if you use a stencil, it's the bits with the holes that will come out as the shape underneath. But today I'm going to share with you some reverse stamping using the stencil so that we get the chicken wire look rather than the gaps in the middle. It's a feather which I'll use, and now yesterday I had an interesting time. I couldn't find the stamp anywhere and I was a bit miffed. So my husband came to help me, and he looked through all my stamps and found this one and wondered if this is the one I was looking for. And I hadn't thought to use these little fronds as feathers, but they do resemble feathers. So I'm going to use those as well. I may use this chicken and I may use this egg shape. So we're going to start with some mixed media, and I looked at some different colours to go with these photos. Now the chickens are actually quite shiny. They're Orpingtons, so they've got this very, Scarlet actually shows it the best, green tinge which has a shine to it. So I'm also going to throw in some shimmer brush there. Now you may or may not have seen the video that came out recently about ombre stamping. So I'm going to do a little bit of that on this piece of French vanilla cardstock. So the first thing I'm going to do is make this into a piece of paper that we can use as one of the layers in our layout. I just remembered there's another colour that might work, which is Jade, the new colour. I had this in my stock, but as you may have heard, Close to My Heart is closing down and I want to put it into my own stock. So I think that's the colour we're going to go with. So turning this over, we're going to use these 3 colours, which are black, espresso and jade. I'm going to do some ombre stamping, which is really mixing just 3 different colours onto the same stamp and progressing them through. So I use a little piece of masking tape at the top and the bottom of the feather while I stamp the middle colour, which is going to be the espresso. And then when I take those masking tapes off, I've got a gap at the bottom which I can stamp on black ink, and one at the top that I can stamp on the jade. And then when I place it on the cardstock, you get a graduated colour. Now you can't see a lot from the black to the espresso on camera, but it is a gradual move from the black to espresso and then onto the jade. So I'll do that a few times on this piece of paper. And as you make your own patterned cardstock, it's a good idea to turn the paper rather than to turn the stamp around. And that way you'll get whatever you're stamping stamped in all sorts of different directions so that you're able to use the cardstock any way that suits you. Also, when you're making your own background paper, it's a good idea to start with the biggest pieces first. So that's why I'm starting with the feather. And I've stamped it in several different places, as you can see, and also worked out that it's a good idea to put the masking tape on the ink pad rather than onto the stamp, which was a little less fiddly. Also need to be careful that you wipe the edge of the block like I'm doing there, because you don't want lines from the edge of the block coming through on your personally designed paper. So then in the gaps I can stamp these little feathers, or they're actually leaves but they look like feathers, so that's what I'm using them as. And I'm stamping them in black because my birds have black feathers. And then in the little gaps in between, I'm going to stamp this little basket of eggs, because the whole point of having chickens was to get eggs. And we did get lots of eggs. In fact, Petra still lays some eggs, which is pretty amazing given her age. So I'm going to put this piece of newly made cardstock patterned paper into my splash box, and I'm just shimmering over with the gold shimmer pen, and then I'll also do some with the clear. And what that does is just add little droplets of shine to it, similar to what I showed you was in the feathers on the birds. So hopefully that's going to work. I'll pop that over to dry. And now this stencil, which I said looks like chicken wire, I'm covering it with pewter ink, and it's going onto pewter cardstock. So trying not to get my fingers all over it, putting it onto the cardstock. Now I'm using a block, which is what most people have. You can use a block to press it onto the cardstock, or I also have a brayer, which tends to transfer it a little easier. Now it's nowhere near as clear as a stamp when you do this reverse stamping with a stencil, but it does give the impression, and the way I'm going to use it in the frames around the photos, it's only an impression that I want, so it'll be fine. And the last one I do there actually turns out the best, so you can see the impression of the chicken wire look-alike there. So I'll trim that into a few smaller pieces so that I can use them in my Cuttlebug. In putting the frame on this occasion I'm going to use some washi tape to keep it in place, because I do want it to stay straight on the Cuttlebug so that the chicken wire stays vertical. So removing it very carefully so that I can reuse it. You can see there that that's quite a cool outline for a chicken. And I'll just go through and cut the other 3 out so that we've got 4 frames for the 4 chickens, and there they are. So I'll pop them to one side. I've just realised that what I'd like to do around the edge of the black piece, which is going on the bottom, is add some shimmer brush around the outside. So as you can see, it's quite thick what I'm putting on, but when it's dry I can rub off the excess and you still end up with a sort of a glittery spotty outline. So I'll quickly go around the outside of that and then put it to one side to dry. And then the jade piece is what this sketch shows where the writing is going to be. So it's going to have a 1/2 inch frame all the way around the outside where we will see the black shimmer underneath. And when I've cut one side, I then decide I'm going to use the light side. So I'll go around the outside with a black ink just to help it blend into the background and also get rid of that cut edge which is on the wrong side. So close to my heart papers are dark one side, light the other, so you get a two-tone, which is really handy, but it's a good idea to cut it the right way the first time. Now the chickens I am cutting into just over 3 inches because I want them to have a little bit of an overlap underneath that 3-inch frame so that I've got something to stick them down with. So I'll cut them to about 3.5 by 3.5, and we want head and shoulders, and it's very fortunate that these chickens have 2 facing one way and 2 facing the other. So when I line them up on the page, I'll be able to have them looking into each other rather than looking out of the page. So there we are with the 4 all trimmed, and rather than put the adhesive on the back of the chicken, of the photo, I'm putting it on the back of the frame so that I can line it up from the front and have them all looking the way I want them to. So once they're all mounted, it looks a little bit like a rogues gallery. And we'll put them all up the top there and bring in our piece of personally made designer paper, which is now dry from the splatter box. I'm just going to trim a little bit off the sides here. Now, when you make paper to use the whole sheet, I would recommend that you put some scrap paper underneath and stamp off the edge of it. I didn't do that with this piece because I knew I'd be cutting into it from the side. So just having some of those stamps go off the edge makes it look a little bit more like a proper piece of designer paper. So I'll stick these 4 chickens on before I cut the left hand side, and that will give me something like an A4 piece of cardstock with the chickens on, and 1/2 inch on each side where we can see some of the outline of that paper underneath. So that's going to go like this, overlapping the bottom of the jade as per the sketch, and then the space on the right is where the journaling will go. So I think the black piece is dry now, so I can put some adhesive on the back of this jade piece and bring that in to stick that down as well. Now you can see that there's quite an excess of shimmer in that black, but as I brush it, it gets rid of the globby bits, but you still get that beautiful shine. I'm not sure if you can see close up the shine. Oh yes, there we are, a little bit of the silver or clear and gold shimmer on the bottom piece. Now I realise that the way I have mounted the 4 chickens doesn't give me any room for the title as per the sketch. So I'll just manoeuvre them around a little bit so that I get a bit more space at the bottom so that I can put the title and a couple of strips as per the sketch. I'm going to bring in another piece of jade, which I'll make the same width as the width of the 2 frames, and pop that on there and mix in a little bit of charcoal and the French vanilla, which is where I'll put the title. So the title's just going to be our first Chooks, and I'm using the pennant alphabet, which is luckily exactly the right size to fit onto this little offcut that I had. I'll stamp one word at a time so that I don't get double ups with the letters until I get to the last word. So the first word obviously is our, and then I'll do first, and then when I get to Chooks, I need to make a space in the middle for the second O. So I've moved the C over to make that space because it's much the same size, and then I can move it back before I stamp, and then put the O onto a smaller block to fill in that gap, which we then know is the right size. Now the stamp of the month this month is about Easter, and it's called Just Chickenin'. So I thought that was quite a cool little stamp that I can use somewhere, so I'm going to stamp that while I'm here. And then I'll go around the outside of the whole piece of French vanilla strip with the black ink, again just to help it stand out from the background, and it just blends it in better and gets rid of that cut edge. The little bit of Just Chickenin' isn't going to fit along the bottom of the page, so I'll trim that off and make it into a little subtitle that I'll put up the top of the page. So I'll cut that off just with a piece of scissors, just with a pair of scissors, and cut a little dovetail into it in a moment. So our first Chooks works quite nicely there, and I'll also cut a dovetail onto the black piece, onto the charcoal piece, by going down the middle and then from each corner into the intersection. So then I can stick all of that together and bring the little Just Chicken in. Now initially I do a dovetail at both sides, but when I put it up the top, you'll see where I decide pretty quickly that I don't want the dovetail on the right hand side, I want it to come in from the edge of the page. So I cut that off, and then I do have to just ink that up a little bit before I stick it down. And then it looks a little bit lonely, so I thought I would add a little piece of charcoal and a little bit of red to match in with the combs of the chickens. And as we know, things look better in threes, so I've grabbed a piece of offcut from the charcoal cardstock that has the reverse stamped chicken wire effect on it, and I'll make a fairly long pennant shape there and just make it fit on the top before turning the whole thing over and cutting from the back. Always easier to cut from the back to make it nice and straight. And then I'll get a little piece of red just to match in with the combs of the chickens, as I say, and do one little dovetail and stick it in. And that finishes off that top right hand corner pretty much until we get to the embellishments. Now with a little piece of offcut from the piece that we stamped with feathers and things, I'm going to stamp the chickens' names. So I'm using the pen pal alphabet to do that, which is quite nice and small. And I've got onyx, and then on another piece I do scarlet. I actually did scarlet on a couple of other pieces and mucked it up twice. So then I end up with the 4 names there that I can trim into little pieces and attach on the bottom part of the frame of all the chickens. Of course, making sure that I get each name under the right chicken. So I think that kind of completes that side of things, and then I'll just add a couple of little black stars and hearts and things around in the red part and down on the bottom green. And then I really want to put a little black dot on either side of all the names. So I grab out my liquid pearls, and the colour is actually called onyx, and just put a wee dot on each end of the names. And that will just about, well, it does complete this page. I have a quick look back at the sketch to compare. It is a little different given that there's only 4 photos rather than the 6. But I'm really happy with the way it's turned out, and I do hope you get a chance to have a go at this sketch yourself. It's fun to do. Thank you so much for watching. Happy crafting, everyone.